You are live, Chair.
Good evening and welcome to this Strategy and Resources Committee meeting on Thursday, the 21st of November 2024. My name is Councillor John Driver and I am the Vice Chair of this committee, and I'm stepping in for the Chair, Councillor Mark Durham, who has given his apologies. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Could I ask members to avoid approaching the top table, as this could create interference with the cameras and the live stream. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers, and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. We do not have any fire alarm testing scheduled for today. If you hear the alarm, please exit using either of the two marked fire escapes. Once out of the building, please proceed to the designated muster point located on the grass verge by the police station entrance. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence. May I have any apologies, Ms Hawkin?
Yes, Chair. We have apologies, as you've already mentioned, from Councillor Durham, and we have Councillor Pratt, who is attending as a substitute for Councillor Durham. Thank you. Okay,
thank you very much. On to agenda item 3, the minutes. It's recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, the 26th of September 2024, found on pages 5 to 40, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Fluker. Are you happy to agree by assent? Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests and non-registrable interests relating to items of business on the agenda having regard to paragraph 9 and appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members were reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise throughout the meeting. Members, any declarations? No? Okay, thank you very much. Public participation. I can advise that we have not received any submissions from members of the public. So on to agenda item 6, the half-yearly Treasury Management Update. This can be found on pages 41 to 50. And I think, Mr. Cookson, I think you are taking us through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here to present the report on the Council's investment activity for the first half of the financial year 24-25. Just to update you on the key points. So we budgeted for average interest rates of 4%. They are coming in around about 4.5%. The budget for the actual investment income was set at 1 million. The current forecast for that, obviously due to the improved interest rates, is around about 1.088 million that we're forecasting currently. So just on the invested balances at the start of the year, it was approximately 25 million. That has reduced now to around about average balance of 23 million. And the reduction there is largely due to the purchase of the waste vehicles of 3.9 million and some increased grant income as well, so that the balances there have reduced by 2 million to 23 million. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Fluker.
There's a very nice succinct report. This one is only really the noting for items to say 151 back.
Well, Yes, the recommendation, then we have one recommendation found on page 41, that members note the Treasury Management Report for compliance purposes. So I'll move that. Do I have a second? Councillor Stamp, can we agree by assent? Thank you very much. On to agenda item 7, then the Rural Settlement List 2025-26, found on pages 51 to 54, and I believe Ms Green is going to take us through that.
Thank you, Chairman. So this report is one that comes to you every year. We are legally required to have a list that enables us to grant rural business rate relief. So every year this is published. This year we have reviewed the settlement list, and that was following some concerns by members last year that were raised about the distinct number of settlements that we had. So we have undertaken that review, and that has been reviewed in line with the latest LDP evidence, and we are presenting at Appendix A a revised list for those designation of the rural settlements. Members will need to be reassured that even though those designations have changed slightly, it doesn't actually affect any of the businesses that are currently receiving those business rates relief. And approving the list tonight will enable us to continue granting rate relief to those eligible businesses. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, Chairman, I sort of don't really understand why we're doing this, but I just wanted to bring through you, Chairman, to Miss Green's attention. If one combines Bradwell on Sea and Bradwell Waterside, which are unlinked, you know, they're two separate villages, and I'm sure the people that live there won't like to be all put under one heading. But, Chairman, I understand the report says that only 6 businesses are impacted by the combining of these villages. But I do know that there's been a change of situation in Bradwell Village, and there is now only one public house. And my understanding is that they might be applying for relief. And the same actually now applies to Bradwell Waterside. So I'd hate to close the door on those premises.
Thank you. So certainly at the time that this report was written, there was a review and there were no businesses that were going to be affected. But obviously there may be in the future, we do accept that. The basis of the review was to align it with the Rural Facility Survey and Settlement Pattern Report that now is an integral part of the evidence as part of our local development plan. So this is really to align our rural list with that latest evidence.
And if you just let me come back as a point of clarity, then if either one of those businesses who would both be entitled to relief came forward, then what you're saying is that both could, even though you've put together Bradwell and Bradwell Waterside villages, apply for and be granted relief.
That would depend on the size of the settlement, so let me just have a look.
Can I, while you're having a look, Ms Green, Councillor Lagan, I think you had your hand up first. So
thank you. Just a couple of brief questions. One, we haven't agreed the rural settlement plan anyway, so that hasn't come to council. So I think this might be a little bit premature. Until that's agreed, then this should fall out of that. So I think for the courtesy of, because you're right, people are very territorial about where they live, and Bradwell is a place that members know I have a great affinity with. They are separate. So I just feel this is it's not a major aspect, but I feel it's a little bit premature. And I know it's only an administrative function, but they're different. And why are we doing it now?
Ms Green, do you want to respond to that and also to Councillor Fluker's comment?
In terms of the evidence base, the information that our previous list was based upon was very historic information, and we did undertake to members that we would review that list in the light of the most most recent data that we hold, and that is the basis for that changes to that rural list. So if members wished, we could revert back to the previous list, but that wouldn't be based upon the previous data and be much more difficult to defend.
Just a minute. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, my understanding of the rural exception scheme is that only one business within that area can qualify. And if there were two, then none of them qualify. It's really for the purpose of the sole business. Same as the post office, if there are two post offices, then you wouldn't get exemption. I mean, I understand the principle of it. I think some of this was driven by the situation of Mayland and Mayland Sea being close together and lumped as well. And so I think it's very much up to the members whether or not we want to have more opportunities for people to have exception scheme or less, because there are two things. As the populace grows, obviously, it's likely to reach the 3,000 threshold a lot quicker if they're merged than if they're individual. But it's really about what we want.
Councillor Stamp.
Thank you. Just an ignorant question, really. Where's Mayland gone now, then? Mayland and Mayland Sea. Where have they gone into where? They're not an exception scheme anymore. They're too big. Are they too big because they got lumped together?
Through the chair.
Well, through the chair. If somebody wants to answer, then that's absolutely fine.
So these will be. No, so Mayland was a larger settlement and was a larger settlement in the previous list as well, so that hasn't changed. So that Mayland has not been part of that list for some time.
Can I come back, please?
Yes.
Chair,
yes.
I actually would like to propose that we don't agree with this. It doesn't accord with the LDP process that's going on as yet. And I think we should leave it alone. I think we are penalising businesses by doing this. And I haven't been convinced otherwise that it is beneficial for this district to actually adopt it.
Ms Green, can I just ask, what are the consequences if we don't approve this now?
Thank you, Chairman. If it isn't approved, it means that any business that currently receives a rural rate relief will not be able to receive it next year, because without an agreed list, nobody can receive it because it has to be renewed every year.
The old one was agreed. We're existing, so this will be a new agreement. I take it.
Yes, Chairman. So what members would need to do is a resolution to not accept the changes that are proposed in the list and revert back to the list that was approved in the previous year.
So just to clarify, so if this is not approved, does that mean we have no list, or does it just mean that we're reverting back to the previous list if we don't approve this?
No, it means if we don't approve a list, we do not have a current list.
Sorry,
because it only...
just to clarify, we're being asked to approve this particular list, aren't we?
We are.
So
absolutely.
if we don't approve this particular list, yes, thank you.
I think what Mrs Green is saying is, if this list isn't approved, then there needs to be a clear motion to approve last year's list. Otherwise, we end up without anything. So there needs to be clarity that there is a list approved.
Councillor Siddle.
Okay, so therefore I make a recommendation that we approve the list that was agreed at whenever it was November 2023, and we abide by the list that was created at that time. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Okay, so we have a proposal that we adopt or re-adopt the list, the previous list. We can do that. In which case, we've got a proposer, Councillor Siddle, seconded by Councillor Stamp. So we need to take that proposal first, because that's the one that's come through first. So can we have a vote on that proposal? Those in favour of that proposal? Right, that's agreed. Anybody against? Abstentions? One abstention. All right. Okay, noted. Thank you very much. Okay, that's where we are with that one then. So we move on. So agenda item 8 then, supplementary estimates, Virements, Procurement, Exemptions, etc. This can be found on pages 55 to 60. And I believe, Mr. Cookson, you are taking us through this.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say that a number of these reports were already created before I started at Maldon. Lance is accompanying me, so if it's okay, could Lance present this report?
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I present to you the report for the supplementary estimates, Virements, Procurement Exemptions and Use of Reserves for 2024-25 Quarter 2. This is the second of 4 quarterly reports that informs members or seeks approval for in-year budget changes by way of virement or use of general or earmarked reserves, as per the Council's financial rules and regulations set out in paragraph 3.1, as well as reporting any procurement exemptions granted during the period. There are 5 virements requested to be noted at paragraph 3.3.1, page 56, and 1 virement requesting approval at paragraph 3.3.2 on page 57. Explanations are provided within the tables on pages 56 and 57. I would add regarding the virement of 66,800 that this is purely an accounting virement request where there is an arrangement to pay for a staff member via invoice to the NHS rather than via payroll. So the need to show the budget on this on a separate expense line. Technically, however, it's because it's a staffing budget movement, approval is needed from this committee. There are no supplementary estimate requests. We are reporting 5 procurement exemptions granted over the quarter 2 at paragraph 3.5. Explanations are provided within the table over pages 57 to 59. There's 1 use of reserves that has been granted to fund the executive assistant role for 6 months at paragraph 3.6, page 59. This has come from the transformation reserve. Happy to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Members, questions? Councillor Lagan.
It's only a thanks to Lance for clarifying, because my heart nearly jumped out of my mouth when I saw that 66 grand, and now I know exactly what it's about. It makes perfect sense. So thank you.
Councillor Fiddick.
I have one question on that. So, I mean, we're saying it's staff costs, but that won't be in the budget as a staff cost, will it? That would be an operational expense that we're now approving, I presume.
It was originally in the staff budget, but we're paying it on invoice rather than through the payroll, so it's
Okay.
a virement to create a separate budget.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have 4 recommendations on page 55. So recommendation little 1, that the virements as detailed in paragraph 3.3.1 be noted, that the virement as detailed in paragraph 3.3.2 be approved. Little 3, that I'll take them all together. The procurement exemptions as detailed in paragraph 3.5.1 be noted, and in little 4, that the reserve drawdown as detailed in paragraph 3.6.1 be noted. I'll take these all together. So are we happy? I recommend these. Seconded? Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, on to agenda item 9 then. This is budgetary control as at 30th September. This can be found on pages 61 to 67. And again, I think Mr. Cookson, you are taking this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to provide an update on the performance of the revenue budget over the first half of the year, the first 6 months. So the revenue budget at the moment, the forecast is a £232,000 underspend. That's largely due £306,000 underspend on payroll costs. That is because the budget was 5% for the pay award. The pay award actually came in at 2.5%. So there is a 2.5% saving there. We also have a small overspend of 32,000 on non-employee costs and a small underachievement of income of 43,000. So that nets at 232,000 underspend at the moment. So what I've also done is I've attempted to make some improvements to the report. So you may notice that there are some additional tables in this report. What I've attempted to do is to provide a bit more insight into the performance of the budget. So the 4 tables that I've added in, quite logically structured. So the table 3 is the top 10 expenditure budgets, and I've shown the adverse variances for that in order. Table 4 is again the top 10 expenditure budgets, but the favourable variances. I've also done the same with income. So table 5 is the top 10 income budgets, adverse variances first, and then in table 6, the favourable variances. Variance analysis is provided underneath in the notes. You will also find as well that there are some variances that will offset each other as well. So I have tried to highlight where they are. You'll see the rest of the report. There is an update on employee costs, inflationary impact, and the impact on the general fund reserve balance. Happy to take any questions on this report.
Members? Councillor Lagan.
Questions, I think. On page 64, 4.4.2, table 5, various analysis, point 2, about the prom. So the underachievement on beach huts income of 28,000 and splash park 20,000, is that less than what we expected to get in then? Or is that more?
Yes.
So it's less, I thought it was. Okay. It is a lot.
Councillor Fluker, I presume your hand is up.
Chairman, I'd just really probably one that the 151 can't answer, and perhaps Mr. Porter either. But I mean, that's when you look at development management, a £400,000 underachievement. We're only 6 months into the year. I mean, that's a huge amount of money that's underachieved against the budget of £1 million, all bar 83,000. Chairman, I mean, can officers give us some reassurance that if that is the case, and we're obviously dealing with a lot less planning applications, that the staff that are employed in that department are actually being transferred to other duties to maintain good value for the council?
I don't know whether anybody wants to respond to that.
Chair, if it helps, I'll take a written response afterwards. But you know, we understand that the LDP review seems to have somewhat stalled because of the MPPF. So we've got a policy team here. We've got basically 50% less income coming into development management, which means to me that you know there must be a lot of slack in those 2 areas. So perhaps we could have a written report back.
Can I just check that this is not a sort of timing issue? Well, I'm just asking the question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Fluker. Again, as we all know, I've just arrived, so that was one of the areas that stood out for me when I looked at the budget. When we were going through these reports just last week, I've asked a similar question as to, you know, let's get under the skin of these numbers. That's a significant value. What's causing that either that underachievement, and what are we going to do to try and rectify that? So I think a written response is probably more appropriate, but it's just to give reassurance that we, you know, as a management team, we've started asking the questions around that.
So I'm very grateful to that answer, and I appreciate the position that the Chief Executive is in, but perhaps whilst you're doing that review, you might look at where we're going with policy and the review of the LDP. Thank you.
Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, so as terms of the local development plan, although the NPPF is coming in, the work hasn't stopped. The work is still carrying on. What the team have done is reprioritised what they were doing and the order that they're doing things. So there's no work stalled on the local development plan. So I don't know where Councillor Fluker has that idea.
Well, Chairman,
But, sorry, that's not on the agenda. So, I mean, it's a question, it's a valid question, but the question has been asked and you've had a response in terms of you will get a written response. So, Councillor Spenceley and then Councillor Stamp.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I just wanted to express my appreciation of the new format, because I actually think it's very, very helpful, and the accompanying notes really suit a layman like me. So there are details in there, like we got very excited about the splash park last year, which you'll become very familiar with in time, and it was 20k under performance, but I'm not sure if our target was a lot more ambitious. I can't remember, but we'll have that debate on the splash park, no doubt, in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stamp.
Whether targets are a bit ambitious or not, they should be realistic when the budgets are put together, I feel, but that's my point. Could I have an explanation of why the park special events is £12,000 underachievement? I thought the reason for going out to an external company was that the income was guaranteed, or more guaranteed than what we were before when we were trying to do it in-house. So I think a report ought to understand why we haven't. I don't think there was any adverse weather conditions that I can remember this year. I thought the weather was pretty good, but obviously I could be wrong. And just as an update, the Planning Policy Working Group meeting was actually cancelled. So I don't know what work has been done or hasn't been done. So just in the interest of balance, because I'm between two people who've got a different view. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone wants to respond. Sir Holmes.
Thank you. I will get Mr Butcher to do a written response, but yes, as it details in 4.4.2 and 0.4 within there, the 12,000 underachievement. I think it was to do with the lack of customers, effectively, a lack of throughput on a couple of the events are expected, and that included the Smoke and Fire Festival. There just weren't as many people there, and therefore the return that came back to the council was less. But we'll get that confirmed to you.
Yes, you can come back.
Thank you. Well, that obviously is going to follow up to why. Has there been a wash-up, I think you call them now, Mr Holmes, don't we, a wash-up meeting after? So, hang on. So we do need to investigate why it wasn't as successful. The numbers coming through, was the prices charged higher? What was the reason? Because it could just go down another 12 or 20 grand next year if you stick to the same methodology. Thank you.
Councillor Stamp, I think Mr Holmes has said that you will get a written response. So I think needs to be, I agree, that needs to be picked, your question needs to be picked up in that written response.
And I appreciate that, but I would also appreciate if I do ask it that my question doesn't get dumbed down by whoever's sitting in the chair or another officer, because I ask questions with all due respect for a reason that other people most probably want to and don't feel they can. Thank you.
Councillor Stamp, I don't think your question is going to be dumbed down, and you do need a written response. Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, Chairman, if I could just build on Councillor Stamp's remark. Where these events have not been as successful as we anticipated, I seem to remember a lot of problems with the prom car park, and thousands of people filled the car park, and I don't believe we were able to claim their car park fee. Could that have contributed to the lowering of our income?
Unless anybody's got an immediate response. Mr Holmes, do you have an immediate response to that?
I don't believe that car parking figure would be included, so this would be the expected income for the events themselves, not the associated car parking.
I think Councillor Lagan.
Just a real quick one, and Mr Holmes is probably going to kill me, but I'm going back to the splash park. Yeah, but it's not. He's still here now, so and Richard knows about and members know that I push vigorously for the splash park to be open. So what I would like to see is, as promised, I believe last year, when we decided to open it in May, and there were circumstances that it didn't get opened in time, that's water under the bridge. I really would like to see a broken down income versus expenditure by the months that the whole splash park was open, because then we can get an understanding of what our strategy could be when we start to look for it for next year, please. Thank you.
Chairman, I understand Mr Butcher will be bringing a report back. I think it's just a matter of timing, but he's intending to bring a performance report back around the splash park so you can see exactly, as you say, when it was open, what the income was and any variances. So you will get that report.
Will that be detailed by, through the chair, sorry, will that be detailed by month or by week? I don't just want to see a big lump of money.
No, it will be broken down.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Councillor Fittock, yep.
Just a quick one, Chair, through you to the 151 officer. Presumably, if we've got a downside in development management income and also noticed building control is significantly down, which are linked, does that forecast reflect that same loss, shall we say? So if we're 40% down, for example, is the variance forecast 40% across the whole year, or are you assuming there'll be recovery over the period that's left?
Sorry, apologies, there was just a bit of interference. Could you just rephrase the question?
In terms of the variances that we've got now, it's showing that they're down on both development management and building control. Is that extrapolated forward, that same loss, you would say? So let's say we're 40% of what we should be. Are you reforecasting 4% for the rest of the year as well?
Yeah, it is a forecast for the end of the year. It's informed by the officers who own the budget.
What I'm wondering though is that based upon the previously forecast income or the downside income that we're actually getting? So if we're expecting £1 million and we're 40% down, are we projecting 40% down across the whole year, or are the officers assuming a recovery in the next 6 months? Because that could be a lot worse if we're doing so.
It's across the full year, yeah.
Do you want... Just do we have an answer? Can we answer?
The 400,000 referred to is the full year forecast, so that's the amount that's being forecast for the full year as the deficit.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Fluker.
The answer is actually in the report, but not in this agenda item. I think it's on page 78, and the officers are actually forecasting the income for development control at 1,083,000. So obviously they're anticipating closing the gap. That's what it says on page 78. It says we've got a budget of 1,083,000, and then the forecast for 24-25, it's in black and white, it's 1,083,000. So the officers obviously confident that they are going to close this £400,000 gap. I'm sorry if I misread this, but that's what it says. Exactly.
It's a different report. So we're jumping reports. So page 78 is on a different report.
Yes, it is, but I'm sorry, Mr. Dodson, but what we're actually speaking to is the development control income. And you'll remember from the previous agenda that we're actually dealing with was a £400,000 shortfall. And in this table here, it doesn't account for that in the forecast. So clearly the figures can be extrapolated from one side to the other. Unless, of course, officers are confident that we're going to meet that forecast of £1,083,000. I mean, we can perhaps discuss it again when we get to the next agenda item, but I'm sure we will. But if we're going to have impacts on budgets, we need to sort of make sure these things match up.
Thank you for spotting that, Councillor Fluker. You are correct. That is an error in the report. I do believe the assessment of the planning income was picked up later, and the fees and charges report was one of the earlier reports. So apologies for the confusion there. Those reports should and will line up in future.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lay.
Thank you. Like Councillor Spenceley, I'd like to thank you for the clarity of the report in this particular area. It's very straightforward and easy to read and picks out a lot of items. I think touching on the points of a couple of councillors here, I think it would be nice to see, and maybe not in some detail, Promenade Park as an asset, but with a listing of all the events in a simple format, what we spend, what we get received in after the commissions or intermediaries we have to pay and any cost in mopping up and dealing with it. It'd be nice to know, for the council here, the committee here, to actually have an understanding of what we're actually doing year by year in the park as such an asset to the council. Thank you.
I think Mr Holmes is going to respond to that.
Chairman, like the splash park, Mr Butcher will be doing that very detailed, event by event, income and estimates as well, so you should be able to see that detailed.
Okay. I think we've probably explored this as much as we can now. So on page 61, there are two recommendations. Little one, that the forecast 24-25 revenue financial position as of the 30th of September, as detailed, is reviewed, and that the forecast 24-25 capital financial position as of the 30th of September, as summarised in Appendix 2, be reviewed. I so move. Oh, are we happy to approve? Assent. Okay.
Chairman,
Or
it's
to
been
agree.
reviewed and it's
All
been
right,
noted,
it's
but
been
we're going
noted.
to, obviously we're going to have the changes that
Well,
come back later.
Indeed.
Yeah?
Indeed. Thank you. Yes. Okay. On to agenda item 10 then, fees and charges schedule 25-26, found on pages 77 to 102. Mr Cookson, I think you're taking this one as well, by all means.
Thank you, Chair. I present to you the report for fees and charges, the schedule for 2025-26. Following the approval of the fees and charges policy report at Council in October, this report details the proposed discretionary fees and charges for 2025-26 for the services the Council provides. These are to be recommended to Council on the 12th of December. These proposed fees and charges for next financial year are listed in detail at Appendix A from page 81, and the changes from the current financial year are summarised at Appendix B from page 99. It's worth explaining to the committee that this list of proposed charges have been through a rigorous process of review with service heads, assistant directors and members via the finance member group, and also the task and finish working group for car parking. The recommendation for car parking charges can be found at Appendix C, page 101. I might also point out to members the table at paragraph 4.1. This shows the projected income and following on from Councillor Fluker's point earlier, these are based on the fees and charges and the level that they're set on, expecting the same level of demand. So when the medium-term financial strategy comes before members, there will be adjustments for non-performance or a lowering of performance, but in terms of what we can expect at that level of fees and charge, at no change in demand or activity, this is the level that can be expected. I hope that makes sense. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Take questions. Councillor Stamp, I think your hand went up first.
I did, thank you very much. I'd like to just dispute one thing when you said about that all of them have been rigorously debated in working groups, etc. And I'm going to refer to the Burnham-on-Crouch car parking charges. I've been a member of that working group and attended the last two meetings, where I would say it wasn't rigorously debated, because I think it was not really debated very much, because I was...
Councillor Stamp, but I'm not going to cut
me.
across that, because it was rigorously debated. You joined the group at a later date, and actually you were referred to the information relating to those charges. So you weren't there when we had the discussion, but it was rigorously debated.
And if you let me finish without interrupting me, which I'm entitled to speak, if you read the step, yes, thank you very much, without interruption, and I didn't interrupt you or any of the members. So you see, you throw me off, which is really unfair. You're supposed to allow members to speak through you, Chair, and not interrupt them when we've actually got something to say. So I was going to say that, and when I joined it, but it was debated before, which is exactly what you've just said. So it wasn't rigorously debated. I was given certain information. Thank you very much. So
Okay.
thank you for that. But I'd also like to say regarding car parking charges, before my other members would like to speak, in the fact that, do you know, you've actually thrown me off. I'm quite cross that you've had the. You shouldn't have interrupted when I was actually speaking. So I'd like to come back, please, because you've actually made me quite cross.
Okay. No, I think it's Councillor Bone first. Councillor Bone, I think you were next.
I was first.
Yeah.
Before Councillor Fluker.
I think you're next.
I've got issues or questions about the charging of Burnham car park.
Mm-hmm.
We have great issues of car parking in Burnham as it is now. There is no enforcement hardly of the CEC. They may come in one hour a week. Have you considered how on earth you're going to enforce this? And you're going to move the car parking and people won't park in there, they'll park on the streets. Have you sort of assessed what is your income streams likely from the car parking charges into Burnham?
Mr. Green, I don't know whether you want to respond to that.
Thank you, Chairman. When the business case was considered by the Task and Finish Working Group, there was consideration of those additional costs, in particular the set-up costs for the machines, etc. But there was also regard to the fact that we would need to ensure that it was enforced, and that was considered as part of the Community Engagement Officer's work plan. So that has been taken into account.
Okay. Yeah, you can come back, Councillor Bone.
Well, the Community Enforcement Engagement Officers hardly come into Burnham now. So, how often are they going to come into Burnham now then, to enforce the car parking charges? Otherwise, you won't get the income that you're anticipating from the Burnham car parks.
Okay, point noted. Councillor Pratt.
Chairman, I know I'm new to this committee and I'm only here because Councillor Durham had an emergency. However, I had planned to come here because when I saw this in the report, I was appalled. This has regularly come to this committee and to full council on many, many occasions in the past. I had a conversation with Ms. Green this afternoon and I wasn't reassured by any of the answers. Answers like, this is going to make 20 grand a year. We're only doing it because Maldon Town does it, so it's only right that Burnham should do it. And there doesn't seem to have been any historical help where I used to sit on the parking partnership. In fact, sometime I was chairman of it. And a move like this in a very small town, it's almost a village because of the size of the car park compared to the streets around it. You don't need the car park. You can park anywhere and still get to where you want to go. Did you want to come in?
I'll wait for you. Yeah. I just want to make sure that I can see.
Now you've thrown me, and I'm so cross.
I have seen you, Councillor Stanford. I think Councillor Lagan.
But if I may, Chair.
Yeah.
What happens is you introduce car parking charges in Burnham in particular, and we've even looked at the Providence car park as well because Burnham Town Council now own that. People don't use the car park, they park in the streets. Now, unless you completely cover the town in yellow lines, you then go to the parking partnership and you say, can you come up with a solution, please? And they write to the whole road and say, we can solve your problem, but it's going to cost you 200 quid a year to get a parking permit outside your house. And the disruption and upset that causes the local councillors is a nightmare. Now, in places like Chelmsford, has to happen. But why fix something that's not broken?
Okay, point noted. However, Councillor Lagan, I'll take you next.
Councillor Stamp, because I don't want
Okay,
to talk about car
Councillor
parks.
Stamp.
Yeah, oh, thank you. Yeah. I'd like to ask some questions in the fact of, I notice it says to regularise or bring it up to Maldon. Yeah, so everybody's got to be treated the same. Well, I would actually ask, and I've actually asked this question before, how much investment have we had in Burnham on Crouch over the past 5 or 10 years compared to Maldon or the Prom? I've never had that question answered. I think it is very unfair. I think the people who have suggested it, no data's been provided. Nobody's actually consulted with anybody in Burnham on Crouch. Nobody's consulted with the businesses in Burnham. We're all at the moment supposed to be looking at health and well-being. Where you're talking about 2 car parks down in Burnham is right next to the sports centre. It's right next to Riverside Park. We have rugby clubs, all sorts of clubs using those facilities. If you're going to start and charge at a weekend or every day of the week, parking charges, what are you going to do? You're obviously going to be helping contribute to the lack of health and well-being, obesity and everything else. So
Okay,
I'm not finished.
All right, keep going. Yeah.
I haven't had 3 minutes.
You have 3 minutes to carry on.
Oh, Joe's
Councillor, I'm going to keep going. Councillor Lagan. Councillor Lagan.
Complaint coming in. No.
Councillor Lagan.
Thank you. There's a couple of things here. These are discretionary fees and charges, aren't they? So these are fees and charges that we choose to charge, we choose not to charge. And I've probably been guilty for the first time ever of actually going through and trying to code and actually understanding the implications of some of the charges. And I completely get why we have to have them. There's no two ways about it. And the work that's been done, it is really good. But there's a couple of things. Maybe it's me just way. One of them is the charges.
Mike.
The charges for a
No.
right to place. Oh, sorry.
Do you want me to go back and start again? Do I give you 3 minutes?
Yes.
3 minutes. I know that constitution. No, there's things that worry me. One of them, okay, is the charges for right to place a monument. Now, a plaque on a bench, 8x2, 10-year lease agreement, it says 10-year leave agreement, new charge, 740 quid. I find that immoral because you're putting something down to remember a person who you loved or you want to honour. So there's a charge in there that I think we need to be careful. And we are looking at this. We are asked to agree these. So we've got to look at them, Chair. The other thing that struck me, obviously wharfage is there, and I'm not going to go into that because that's taken care of. Rustic benches, parks and open spaces, 1,500 quid. Seems an awful lot of money for a bench. And then the bit that got me, and I don't understand why we charge so much. So we talk about health and well-being. Organised boot camps, personal training in council-owned parks. Why do we charge so much for what is fundamentally one-man bands who go down with a couple of dumbbells and have people who really are committed to want to get fitter? I understand they'd have to pay their own insurance. But I find some of these things just a little bit pricey. And maybe not needed. The big one for me is the bench, the plaque on the bench, because I've just had a plaque made for Open Up West Maldon and it was 42 quid.
Can I just check? Can I just ask what is there a significant change from previous years, or this is basically an inflationary increase in these values? Ms. Green.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, these are the fees that have been in place for many years, and they will have just been increased by inflation. If there is a new charge, then, or a significant difference, that would have been flagged within the report. So yes, this is a continuation of previous charges.
Chair, that is a new charge at 740. It's clear. I've thank you, Ms. Green, but I've gone through that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Siddle. Oh, Councillor Spenceley, sorry, and then Councillor Siddle, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. There's a new item, unauthorised distribution of free literature on designated land. So I guess that's someone just handing out leaflets to come to Jesus or whatever, and it's a scheduled area. Is there a schedule like the High Street and other locations that are designated that accompanies this? Because that's a new one to me. I think that was the only thing. I would, as a footnote, I would happily pay money to visit Burnham on Crouch, but I'll leave it there.
Councillor Siddle.
Yeah, I can understand the feeling from Burnham members. To me, this is about ensuring that we have the income to maintain those car parks. So that's one of the things. If we've never maintained it, now's the time to get some money so that we can maintain them, so that we can look after them, so that they're safe for people to use. Because if they're not being maintained and there's problems, which I know there has been problems in the past, this provides us with the opportunity to get some income to maintain those car parks. If the members for Burnham are saying that these car parks aren't needed and aren't required and aren't used, then that's what I heard, and that people can park on the road. Surely what we need to then do as a council is look at utilising that land and perhaps turning it into housing. Because if it's not being used, if it's not necessary, then therefore we need to look at how we use our assets.
Well, look, we've got a few hands going up here. So, Councillor Fittock and then Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's a difficult one. Obviously, I'm not a resident of Burnham, but I do travel to Burnham on occasions, and I think to seek consistency is the only reason to introduce car parking is somewhat unreasonable, because you have to look at each instance on its own. I do have concerns about introducing parking because it can discourage people from visiting and just having a wander around during the day. I mean, I don't know if there's been any analysis on that. The argument will be that the car parks in Maldon will too, no doubt, but again, you're talking about different circumstances, and just because you do it in Maldon doesn't mean to say you should do it everywhere. I am sort of somewhat pleased that there is no charges of an evening, because obviously that would encourage people to travel there of an evening and spend a few hours there, but it's very difficult to go with the opinions of others when we've not been involved in the process in the first place to understand what the real basis of this is. If it is to provide a better service, then maybe there is good reason for it. If it's just to provide consistency for Maldon, I don't think that's an appropriate reason for any motion or fee to be put in place.
Councillor Pratt.
Thanks for letting me come back, Chairman. Can I just clarify, because Councillor Cyril may have misunderstood what I said. I wasn't saying the car parks were not necessary. I was saying the problem is of displaced car parking. I think I actually used the words displaced car parking. If you charge a fee, people will look elsewhere. And there are alternatives, and they're not convenient alternatives for the residents. But that's not why I wanted to come back. The reason I wanted to come back is there's many lines on this, and I'm sorry to agree, but one line says Burnham on Crouch Pontoon, commercial mooring only, £1,000.
Yes.
Is that a visit? Is that a month? Is that a year? And why is it £1,000? And really, is that what you expect the ferry that uses the pontoon 3 or 4 times a day?
Okay, well, you need to respond to that, Ms Green. Can you respond to that, please, that specific question?
Thank you, Chair. So that is £1,000 charge per year, and that would only be paid through a licence process. So there will only be vessels that are licensed to be able to use the pontoon that will be allowed to use it, and that will be that £1,000.
Okay.
Could I come back, please?
No, you can't. Just.
Well, what's the point of being here?
Well, because other people are also asking questions as well. You can come back again in a minute.
Thank you, Chairman. I was only going to say that it isn't a case just of consistency. If we, as a council, maintain the car parks, then there has to be some form of cost recovery. It has to work for Maldon, it has to work for Burnham.
Councillor Fluker.
Well, I hope you let the Burnham members come back, because one in particular is, although he's substituting, I know he was coming tonight anyway. Look, I just want to go back to 4.1 while we all still thinking about car parking and this development control. I mean, I think we pretty much agreed that income's going to be around about 600,000 or 700,000 this year based on performance to date and the projection of officers. So to project it at 1.1 million, an increase for 25-26, I think that's a bit of a challenging target, but I look forward to Mr. Porteous reworking his figures. But just going back to car parking, look, you know, my friend Councillor Bone, the chairman of the local constitutional club, he's got his own car park, which is pretty heavily policed if you don't put your number in. So he knows. But look, on a more serious note, you know, the Foundry Lane car park, which members are talking about this evening, is actually the doctor's surgery car park. So I don't know what the impact is on that. We got this bizarre thing in Burnham where we own the car park for the surgery. So I'm not quite sure about thinking about that. I think that should have been highlighted in the report. And it's, you know, I understand what Councillor Pratt says about people will go and find a car parking space elsewhere. But for anybody that's on the South East Area Planning Committee, it's nigh on impossible to arrive in Burnham at 7:30 and find a car parking space anywhere. And you know, and if we're going to bring a lot of, and there's a thing about being tourists, and you know, if you're going into an area and you know that you can pay £1 or £2 for a parking space, it's better than driving around miles and miles and miles in Burnham looking for a space only to be whacked by a parking car. So, but I think we need to have a little bit more information when this report goes forward, and it's disappointing it's not in there this evening, particularly around the costs of maintaining these car parks and the impact on the doctor's surgery. I mean, are we saying now that we're going to charge people that go to Burnham surgery, but the people that go to the surgery here don't pay, or they get an exemption? So, and you know, I find this is going to be really difficult if we can't police our own car park. And today I counted 28 cars with no tickets on in the car park. How on earth are we going to do this without the provision of ANPRs? So I think there needs to be a lot more work done on this, and that's my...
Members, can I just make this as a general point, that clearly car parking, like it or love it, is a major contributor to the funding of this council. Now, that means that actually we could do away with car parking charges in Maldon, but if we did, that would have a huge impact on the functioning of this council. So it's not just about Maldon, it's also about how we bring in money to fund the council going forward. Now, we have looked, and the car parking group looked at this in detail. I take Councillor Stamp's point that actually she wasn't there at the beginning of those discussions, but there was a lot of detailed discussion which was picking up some of the concerns that have just been raised by Councillor Fluker in terms of one of the car parks being used by the doctor's surgery. But there was a lot of discussion about that, and in the end it looked like the money that could be brought in by charging for car parking in Burnham would actually enable reinvestment in those car parks. And concern has been raised, and understandably, about the fact that we haven't been actually doing as much upkeep of those car parks as we could have done. Well, this provides some funding to do that. Councillor Spenceley.
Thank you, Chair. I think I suffered from introducing a topic other than car parking, but I did ask a question about what was designated land and didn't get an answer. So if we see someone handing out leaflets on the high street, can we call an officer to raise 150 quid for the council?
Chairman, I will have to absolutely confirm, but my understanding it may be just our own land. So effectively this is a deterrent. So, and really I've got a note here to say, if a person commits an offence, if they distribute any free printed material without the consent of the principal literal authority on the land which is designated, then that will be our land. So I think it's primarily around our own estate, but I will confirm that in writing after.
Well, to come back on that, I Googled it quickly, and Brent has designated a whole lot of streets as designated land where they can levy such fines. So.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't get an answer. Can I roughly have how much has been invested in Maldon compared to Burnham? Or even if I get a written response before it goes to council over the last 5 or even 10 years, to have let's have a proportionate, balanced argument for how much has been actually invested, not within Burnham, but in the Maldon district or the Maldon prom area. I do think it matters, Mr. Dodson.
Yes, Councillor Thompson.
My query, which I was discussing with my colleague, was, does that need qualifying? Because I don't understand what you mean by invested. Is that all investment? Is that investment in car parks? That was my question. It's hard to give you information if I don't fully understand what it is that's being asked. So it's that qualification.
Absolutely fine. I'm more than happy, because I'm talking about the economy. I'm talking about tourism. I'm talking about everything that will change if this council starts charging in Burnham on Crouch. I moved to Burnham, give me a minute, 20 odd years ago, and it was like a closed, dead village, and that was in the recession. But windows were boarded up. It was a very, very difficult situation, and we know the changes and how hard it is to make a business go in Burnham on Crouch. It's not like Maldon. We don't have the same sort of football in Burnham as you do in Maldon, so we don't have the turnover. And all I'm asking you is to actually think about it. And it's all right, the other residents, if you're going to do, when did the policy change and say we're going to park we're going to charge parking on all our car parks out here? When did it say? Are we going to charge for drapers if that comes on board soon? So Haybridge are going to get hammered the next time. And I understand what you say about it's an income, but it doesn't mean to say it's right. Why haven't you even looked at debating or even consulting with the residents and there's no data to justify this. You've not done any number counting. You've not been over there at the weekends to see how many people park there. There's been no information that's been produced to actually justify these charges. Thank you. And I would like that information written before the next meeting.
Chairman, yes, that would be possible. We'll have to fix a time period, a window, perhaps, as you said, just 5 years or so. The only comment I would make is obviously proportionally, Maldon has more assets than Burnham, so it's not a straight comparison, but I'm sure we can look at past records to see capital expenditure, revenue expenditure, any extra items have been put in, but I'm in the hands of our colleagues in finance to be able to do that for us.
Councillor Lagan.
It's really more, and it is a bit of car park, it's a little bit of a shared observation, and I can't give you, for confidentiality reasons, I can't give you the exact amounts, but there's 2 businesses that I'm involved in where the principal of the businesses has introduced car parking charges. One business is closing in December, and the other one has lost over £100,000 in turnover purely for the car parking charges being invoked. So they do have an impact. And another point, and it's a question. We don't know what would happen if we halved or put free parking in. We don't know the impact.
Sorry, where, Councillor?
If we said in Maldon, for instance, if we said, okay, White Horse car park is 10 pence, right? You're going to say, and you can scoff, but if you did that, we don't know. We know we get X amount of money from car parking, which is crucial for what we've got at the moment, but we really don't know what the impact would be if we went the other way. So a lot of times reducing fees for people allows you to have higher churn, which actually gives you more revenue, which gives you more economic gain. So we just don't know.
Well, I think one of the discussions, and it was quite a lengthy discussion at the car parking working group, was to look at the numbers of cars parking and to try and make some judgment about changing costs to increase the numbers turning up. And therefore, if you bring the cost down, do you actually therefore get more cars turning up? I think the view was that most of the car parks are full. So actually, reducing the car parking costs will simply reduce the revenue you've got. It's not that you'll get more footfall. However, so some work has been done on that, Councillor Lagan, but I'll take Councillor Fluke and then Councillor Pratt.
I'm interested about the figures about this, because years ago when we introduced free car parking, I remember some friends of mine who work in, sorry, Jeanette can't hear me. Can you hear me, Jeanette? Right. When we introduced free Christmas car parking in the car parks in Burnham, a lot of the staff in the high street, they were absolutely joyous because they didn't have to park at Tesco's and walk up the hill every day. So, and it's trying to work out what this churn is. If you've got free car parking and it's filled up with people who work in the town, then that's not bringing in new people. It is a very, very difficult piece of work to try and extrapolate what you're trying to do. And you're absolutely right. If the car park's full, one would think, basic economics would tell you to increase the prices, but I'll leave that to others.
Councillor Pratt.
Chairman, again, picking up on the reason that the doctor's car park on Foundry Lane used to be you can park there all day, and it used to have people from the railway station parking there all day. We then introduced no more than 4 hours, which has resolved the people that work there, the people that commute. My question, and I'm sorry to harp on it, is could someone explain to me how we came up with £1,000 for a commercially licensed boat to use our pontoon? Because I am a great believer in the ferry. It brings people across from the other side of the river, and it's a great little business. But I think to suddenly burden them with £1,000 to park on a pontoon, I won't go into the fact that visitors to Burnham need to be able to use it, because that's a whole different debate. I'm just looking at £1,000 for an annual fee for the ferry. Who's probably going to be the only person that will give you the money. I think that's wrong. And I won't say any more, Chairman. I promise.
Okay.
There is
Councillor Green,
one supplementary, if I may, before Mrs. Green answers.
quickly.
How are we going to vote on this? Because some of it I agree with, bits of it I certainly don't. So if you say, do you agree with this by assent, I'm afraid I'm going to say
I don't think I'm going to ask for that. Whatever I do, I won't be asking for that. Councillor Bowne.
Well, I want to propose that Burnham and Crouch has kept us free parking in Burnham on this one.
I'll second that.
I've heard it.
Well, we've had a proposal and a seconder. So we're going to have to go with
Like
that.
recorded vote, please. Do I have a seconder? Thank you.
With the greatest respect, I don't feel comfortable voting because I haven't got a clue what the charge is, what we're paying for maintenance. So I think this would be quite dangerous to do this.
So do I, because actually what we've gone through and the finance staff have gone through is a lengthy process to come up with fees and charges. And as you know well, there are a large number of them that impact some of them on each other, and that they will have a very significant impact on the budget. So if we don't agree to this, then we want to go through and unpack it line by line, that is going to be an incredibly difficult position to put ourselves in. Councillor Siddle.
I had my hand up first. I did. So
Well, okay.
I would like to remind everybody, working groups don't make decisions.
No.
So it comes to council, whichever committee or full council, to make those decisions.
Yep.
And people at working groups, just because certain people agree and disagree, doesn't mean to say that they're the right decisions to be made.
No, the decisions have to be made here, I understand, and at full council. Councillor Siddle.
So therefore, could we have a recommendation that we agree the fees and charges in Appendix A, apart from the car parking charges in Burnham, and the car parking charges in Burnham, a more detailed report is taken to full council and is agreed at full council?
Which I think that's a proposal rather than a recommendation, and I'm happy to support that, because I think it solves the problem.
What about councillor Pratt's bit on
Well, let's just see if we can get. I thought you had a response to that, but Councillor Ms. Green.
Thank you, members. As a slightly longer answer, because I think that will help to put this into context. So when the Burnham pontoon was put in, the design was that the majority of the pontoon could not accept vessels to be berthed against them because there were insufficient piles, and therefore the main part where apart from the only area that vessels can actually come up to is the hammerhead, because that has been reinforced. It is able to take those larger vessels. However, even though it is strengthened and it is able to take them, it is still going to be subject to a greater degree of wear and tear. And therefore, that's the reason why that charge is there. It's to help to contribute to the cost of that increased wear and tear.
This is great. Good try. I'm sorry. Could you, therefore, if I may, Chairman, what are those expected costs, and how are you going to discount the cash flow? £1,000 once off, once a year. There's only one user. So you're going to get £1,000 a year to offset the cost?
I understand that's a legitimate question to ask, but actually I think you're going to need to get a response outside of this, and we'll need to go away and look at that, because I don't think somebody can come up with an answer to that. Yeah.
So I will amend my my recommendation so that all the fees and charges scheduled for 25-26 set out in Appendix A be agreed, except for
Anything to do with
Burnham car parking and the pontoon charges, and that will come back to full council as a separate item.
Councillor Fluke, you're seconding that? Okay, well, I think that may well allow us to move forward. So on the basis of, sorry, Councillor Lagan.
You had a resolution which was seconded, so you need to withdraw that first, and then this one can go for process.
Yeah, indeed.
I withdraw my seconding for the
Thank you.
resolution.
And
I'll withdraw my proposal.
thank you very much. Okay, so those have now been withdrawn. Thank you, Councillor Lagan. So we now have a proposal which we've heard from Councillor Siddle, seconded by Councillor Fluke. Those in favour of that proposal, can you vote, please?
Was asked to be recorded, so you need to record it.
Okay, all right, we'll go through. Well, it was the original one you wanted recorded, but you'd like this recorded.
No, fair enough then.
You're happy to withdraw from this one, okay? So can we have a vote then? Those in favour, those against, and abstentions. Okay, thank you very much. That took a little longer than. Anyway, there we go. Okay, agenda item 11 then. So this is found on pages 103 to 118, capital bids. Mr. Cookson, I think this is over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is to consider the 25-26 capital projects which have been considered and recommended by the Finance Member Group. Detailed projects are set out in Appendix A. Just to note, the Finance Member Group has reviewed these proposals and recommends to the committee that they are approved. The total amount of capital projects that are to be added to the existing capital programme comes to £558,000. Each project was categorised under 3 different headings. Essential, failure to carry out the project is likely to have health and safety implications and/or will have fundamental impact on service provision, and each of these projects has been assigned that essential category. All the projects as well are to be funded from the Capital Receipts Reserve. Happy to take any questions.
Councillor Siddle, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a question about the MDC roads resurfacing, because I did raise this at the Finance Working Group, and my question was that we're resurfacing the emergency road on Promenade Park because of the trees which are lifting the tarmac all the time. And my proposal to the working group, which I don't think we actually decided anything, or we didn't get an answer on it, was to create a surface that would be able to take vehicles, but is something where it's plastic with a grass growing through it, which actually would probably look better as well, and would be less prone to damage from the tree roots, which is what's causing the problem with the tarmac. Yeah, if we carry on just re-tarmacking it, then it's just going to cause the same issue in a few years' time. The tree roots will lift it. If we have something that is environmentally friendly and allows actually probably better for the Remembrance Avenue, better for the trees, will help the trees grow and keep there, rather than a tarmac surface. So can I be assured that when that item gets looked at by officers, that they will look at a green solution for this rather than a tarmac road?
Who would like to respond to that?
Chair.
Ms Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Siddle. Yes, I think we can give that guarantee that we'll look at green solutions, and we want to get best value for our investment. So, not repeatedly resurfacing. So yes, we will.
Councillor Siddle again.
Car park machines, is that for Burnham? That needs amending.
Yeah. So, Councillor Fluker.
Well, the first thing, Chairman,
Councillor
can I say that having been on this committee, I don't know how many years, but I think starting at 7 p.m. focuses the minds. Well, clearly you don't want to start at 7 p.m. again. Anyway, so yeah, Chairman, look, these capital bids, and the first thing, I'm delighted that there is a proposal to spend £18,000 in Councillor Stamp's ward in Burnham, and it looks like another 25 in the Riverside Park Library car park. Not sure where that is, but. Chairman, we're investing a lot of money here in machinery, particularly, a sidearm flail, which does seem quite a lot of money at £65,000. But can the officers assure me that after spending £65,000 on a tractor sidearm flail, I can reassure residents in Southminster that they will see it being used on their footpaths? Chairman,
Councillor, I take your point, and I have a lot of sympathy for the question you're asking. It was another of these fairly extensive conversations, and where we put it to officers, is this something that's really needed? And it was put to us that it was something we needed. Mr. Hobbs, I don't know whether you would like to just reinforce that point, or?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try to. So I think essentially it's not about us being able to do more areas, it's making sure that we can do the areas that we have to do safely, and our staff can undertake that work also safely for them. We have to consider things like hand-arm vibration. Some of the equipment that they're using is not really appropriate or efficient to use. It takes more manpower to do it in terms of the staff that have to do that. So this piece of equipment will certainly improve the efficiency, and it will also ensure that we're doing it without creating any health and safety risk to our staff as well. So that really is essentially what it is. We could have another separate conversation perhaps outside of the committee regarding the work in the areas that the team done. I think there has been a difference. You've seen a difference because we no longer have highway rangers, and some of the areas were covered by highway rangers and now some are not. So I think there's a debate to be had around the amount of service that we can provide in the district, but this is about making sure that we can do the work we are required to do as safely and as efficiently as we can.
Councillor Lagan, and then Councillor Fiddick, and then Councillor Stamp, and then Councillor Pratt.
Hand-arm vibration syndrome is a serious thing. It can cause great discomfort and lasting debilitating conditions. How many cases of it have we had in the council over the last 10 years? Is there evidence that refurb, especially like on the mower, for instance, that additional suspension that could be installed could help? Because there's a lot of statements, and I'll pull up one here, Mr. Holmes, because you and I usually get into this conversation. This is about the truck community equipment team vehicle, and it says, is there any health and safety implications? It's good to see it in there from a health and safety professional. High result of breakdown. This could impact on operational service, potential health and safety breakdown. There's another one that says about lone working. Well, you can buy a lone worker alarm for £89. So there's lots of different. It's again, for me, if I want to support that, I've got to have a little bit more detail to go. That's an absolutely no-brainer, rather than these are the things that we think are what we're bidding on. If that makes sense.
Chairman, I don't have that degree of detail here before me this evening. I know some of the vehicles are aged. We've had steps rusting away and falling off of the back of vehicles. That was the latest incident that happened. It was just and of course they all represent a risk to those staff. In terms of hand-arm vibration, we monitor hand-arm vibration, so we manage it so we don't have the problem. And I think the issue here is that we have to turn over so many staff to do the piece of work because we have to limit the hours that they're exposed to the risk. This piece of machinery would take that risk away. So this is about reducing risk, and that's how you get your efficiency as well. So I haven't got minute detail on every single item on this evening, but it has been tested. It's been through the finance working group. Officers have explained the items to the working group, and this is the kind of refined list. There were others. This is the kind of the end process really in terms of bringing it to you this evening.
Councillor Fitter.
Yeah, I mean, I think with respect to the flower power, it was requested that more information be provided by finance working group so we could actually ensure that it was the kind of thing to do. I mean, Councillor Len was quite correct. I mean, you know, I don't know whether it's actually it exceeds the ELV, which is up on the upper limit, or it's a request to replace the need for an action plan because it hasn't reached that. You know, so I don't think we really know enough about personally. I don't know enough about it. So have they looked at alternative types of equipment? Have they looked at alternative types of equipment such as electric hedge trimmers rather than the old mechanical ones? Personally, I don't think that we've heard enough in the finance group. It wasn't supported. I sort of moving on to the capital position. From what I'm reading, basically, we've got £800,000 left, and we're planning to spend £560,000 of that, which will leave us £240,000. So presumably, moving forward, we're going to have to meet our capital requirements from our reserves, because there's no other source of income, is there? So we've spent all the money that we've had, and now we're in a position the next year we're going to have to find a sum of money to meet our capital requirements because we've got none left.
Folks, if you could respond.
Yeah. Yes, you are correct, Councillor Fittock. That is the situation as is detailed in the report. However, you know, we do have the option to replenish those reserves based on the performance of the revenue budget, and of course any disposal of council assets, for example, if that was decided, that would be something, a strategy that, you know, councils would want to follow.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Fluker.
Yeah, sorry, just a point of clarity really, because owning a tractor myself, it's a TE20. It's someone will know what that is. It's an old tractor. But just, I'm a little bit confused. Perhaps it's a bit like the conversation we had before about building management fees. But on page 107, the sum total of the flail is £65,000, which I thought was rather expensive. But then if one goes to the actual officer's capital project sheet, it actually shows it at 40,000, but it does, with all fairness, speak to a compact tractor and machine. So compact tractor has been, and machine has been identified. So I don't understand what this discrepancy is between the 65,000 on 107 and the 40 on 110. Has somebody forgotten to put the tractor into the 40,000? Or add the tractor on, and can we really buy a tractor in that picture for £25,000? But again, you know, we've got an issue here which isn't dissimilar to the one that I mentioned before, and you know, I urge those that write these reports to read them and double check them to prevent these sort of conversations, because it probably doesn't affect Mr. Porteous' overall figures, but it really isn't helpful to members when making these decisions if they can't do them in an informed way. But I'm sure Mr. Wilkinson's taken that on.
Councillor Stamp, you...
Yeah, thank you. No, I was just going to back up what Councillor Siddle said. I thought when we talked about buying this arm, that we also talked about trying to get an income. Didn't we turn around and say that we would try and get an income for farming out the service?
So there was a discussion about whether that was something that might be something we should consider, given that we were buying it.
Yeah.
It was, but that's not in this capital bid. Councillor Pratt.
Chairman, a couple of items. The 12 grand for car park machines. I can understand that the doctor's car park machines would be quite easy to install, but the Millfields one is right down the end of a very long road. I don't believe it's a dusty surface. I don't believe there are any lights or any electricity down there. And I'm not sure that even if half the money is spent on the doctor's car park, whether £6,000 will be enough to provide a car park machine down at Millfields. It's a very long way away.
Well, I mean, given the previous discussion and the resolution to put off or move to a council decision with further information, what we're going to do about car parking in Burnham, if we're not going to be charging car parking in Burnham, then putting in these machines.
Indeed.
So these two elements probably need to go hand in hand.
Okay, so we do need to change the recommendation. And I live in a very rural road and back onto a private road of about half a dozen roads. And once a year, we ring up the local farmer and he comes down with his tractor and his flail and he clears our road. It costs us about 20 quid each. I just wonder the logistics of spending £65,000 on a tractor and a flail where we're probably only going to use it for 6 weeks of the year, whether we could not contract cheaper than spending £65,000.
Do you want to respond to that, Mr. Holmes?
Chair, I will invite Mrs Green to comment on that, if I may. Obviously, we do have contracted services as well, because there's a difference between the verges that we do on highways, and there's the difference between our own land, and for instance, alongside the bypass in Maldon, which again the council has to maintain, and this piece of equipment will be used because a lot of that is being done by hand. And I also want to pick up on the comment around electric hand trimmers. We're already using electric hand trimmers. It still gives you a vibration, despite petrol or electric. But Mrs Green might be able to help with that.
Thank you, Chairman. So I've just got in front of me the updates that were given to the Finance Working Group. So if I could just run through this, 'cause I think hopefully that will reassure members of a number of things. So the current mower, which is the one that we were talking about, has a significant issue in terms of vibration. It's more than 10 years old. There's been significant work to try and rectify the issues, including replacement of blades, various units that have been checked and replaced, but that hasn't solved the issue, which is now meaning we've got a machine which is quite old, and it's probably not going to be able to be corrected in terms of the hand-arm vibration issues. So therefore the intention is to replace it with the tractor with various attachments. Now it does say that it does have multi-purpose use, and the current mower that it would help to replace is used on an almost daily basis, so it is something that is used very regularly. What we did say is that we would certainly look at this piece of equipment to see whether it could be leased out. The sort of officer view on that was that we would need to then have a proper process for managing the rental out, health and safety issues, and so the officer time against the income that we'd get may not be effective, but it is definitely something that we did agree to look at. And we also did look at leasing, which it was unlikely to be more cost effective for a single piece of machinery. It would be more effective if we were buying a number of pieces of equipment. In terms of the resurfacing, we certainly did give an undertaking at the Finance Working Group that we would look at alternatives and that we would engage with the emergency services to look at options to ensure that we could look at an alternative surface and compare those costs. And finally, the other thing was the community engagement officers' request for replacement vehicle. The reason for that is the vehicle that we've got really is becoming not cost effective to maintain. It has had a significant number of issues, and therefore it's been, because of the number of issues, it's deemed to be more cost effective to replace it because of the amount of repairs and maintenance which haven't resolved the ongoing issues. So hopefully that does help members.
Thank you, Ms Green. Councillor Siddle?
Thank you, Mr Green, for that. However, it's a tractor sidearm flail and a ride-on mower. There are two things that are being requested, which is £100,000. I can see, to me, if we're going to get this tractor thing, can we not see whether that tractor can be a mower? Or the thing is in terms of this, I know it's for footpaths and things like that rather than roadsides, and so therefore it does make it more complex in terms of bringing a farmer, because a tractor and a farmer might not be able to get down. So it's a small tractor, I think, from what I understand. But I'm still not convinced that this has been thought through in the right way, and we've looked at all the alternatives, and whether we can look at combining a types of equipment together. So I would put forward a recommendation that we approve these, apart from the tractor side on flail and the ride-on mower. And the parking machine. And the parking machine.
Okay, let's just hear some more. Councillor Physick, I think you...
Yeah, I would agree with Councillor. I mean, the problem I have with this is that this is not new legislation. This legislation's been around for an awful long time, so why all of a sudden have we got a problem we didn't have before? I mean, our hedges growing, have we got more hedges to maintain? Are hedges growing faster? I mean, I think we just need a little bit more information to be assured that all other options have been looked at. And I would have thought that under normal circumstances, if you're automating a manual process, you would normally expect some kind of cost benefit in doing so. And that's how we normally go about justifying things. If there's a real health or safety reason and we can't do workarounds in terms of, as you said, changing hours or letting someone do half a shift rather than the full shift on one particular piece of equipment, then fair enough. But I just don't think there's enough to justify it just on health and safety grounds without quantification.
Well, yes, Councillor Lagan, and then I think we've got a proposal, but Councillor Lagan.
Mine's not to do with that, actually. Mine's to do with the fencing for Martin's Law after the Manchester tragedy. I wondered, it's for venues, and the prom could be construed as a venue within the legislation. The problem I've got is there to deter terrorist attacks. What we're proposing, I don't think that stands a chance in a dog's breakfast to stop anybody who's intent on doing anything. If you look at the fencing, we've already got the wooden fencing. That's not going to stop somebody who's hell bent. I think that personally, I'd like to see this come out and to have a look at it. Right, what do we really need to do? Because this might not be enough. I think we'd paying lip sync to it to get it the tick in the box with no disrespect. But then if you're going to do areas more solid bollards would be better to stop somebody driving through. There's a whole load of options. So I was just concerned about, are we just doing it to get what we think is enough to tick the box, because it won't stop. I can't see it stopping from what I've learned about terrorism.
Do you want to respond to that? I mean, I will say something as well in relation to that, but Councillor Holmes. Mr. Holmes, no, just on your party gift is you've been promoted to.
Thank you, Chairman.
Whichever way round that goes.
I think it's not a tick in the box. We have consulted with Essex Police, and I think it's about taking reasonable steps to protect the public from vehicles. I would totally agree, if a heavy goods vehicle decided to get through most fences without extreme protection, then it will happen. But we have had occurrences where vehicles have strayed through into pedestrian areas. We do have events with lots of people, young people on the park. We have a duty to protect them in any case. So I think this is really quite essential to make sure that we don't inadvertently allow a car or vehicle to get into that. I think if members are looking for much stronger protection, I think we'd have to have another look at it. But I would urge this to be the first step, if not the final step, if we need to do more. But I don't think it's going to mean that we're wasting money on this, because I think there's a need today for it, just to prevent something happening.
I think the discussion we had was along the lines that the likelihood of anything happening is remote, but if it did happen and you hadn't done anything, then actually your defence is much weaker. So even if actually we put up fencing that is not going to stop a tank, but is going to maybe stop somebody bumping up onto the or trying to just drive across the playing fields, it puts an initial barrier in their way, and at least we can argue that we have done something in respect of protecting the public on that open field, even though it may well be limited in what it actually can achieve. I think that was the discussion we had, which was why in the end I think we sort of reluctantly said, okay, if we need to do this. And when we saw them, they didn't look out of place. They didn't look too ugly. They looked sort of like we've got in other areas. So it looked like it sort of fitted the scene, as it were. Councillor Spenceley?
Yeah, just an observation, Chair. I have a concern that the working groups aren't really kind of working, because we're recycling stuff that we discussed at great length. And, when you're in a working group, you don't think along party or group lines. We all kind of work together collaboratively and I think come to an agreed solution. And people can report back, I guess. And here we are, rehearsing these things again, and they might surface yet again in full council. It's just an observation that why are we not bottoming out stuff in the working groups and, having this oven ready, to use that horrible expression, to bring to strategy and resources.
Well, hang on, just Councillor Fluker.
Councillor Spencer makes a good point. I mean, the working groups is supposed to be where the detail is, which means the précis of what's discussed there should be reported to the committee. So we should have all of the background information. So we should have information, to cover off these things about, costs and everything else. But clearly that doesn't seem to be happening. And that is what is supposed to be happening. The working groups are supposed to deal with the detail, spend hours and hours and hours, and then if they can't agree, come back. But the officers will pick up the members' concerns, and they then should be covered off within the reports. So all of this information tonight, to highlight one is this £1,000 fee. I rather fancy putting my boat there, and that'll save me £5,000 a year. If it's only £1,000. But, this is where we bring this detail back, because I'm sorry, but we are going to have exactly the same discussion and debate when we get to council. And you're going to have a lot more members there, all speaking for 3 minutes, but there will be all the Burnham members will be there. And there's just so much detail that could have been extrapolated from the working groups to put onto the reports to counter the arguments or provide the information to support or oppose the arguments. So I think we probably need to go back to have a look at how we used to do things.
Okay, point noted. I think we had a proposal from you, Councillor Siddle, in terms of one element not to include. Would you like to put that proposal?
Yes, so I would like to put forward a recommendation that the committee agrees a capital project bid set out in Appendix A in order to finance the 25-26 capital programme, and recommend that to council for approval, apart from the tractor side arm flail and the ride-on mower, which I would suggest that comes back to working group or whatever, so that we can agree that at another stage when we have more detail. And the parking machine.
Yeah, Miss Arms, yeah.
Chairman, I think that would be perfect. Yes, bring it back to this committee. I believe there will be another working group that's going to be held in between this meeting and the next strategy and resources. So I think it's the perfect opportunity to pick up all these items.
And I would also ask that when the report does go to full council, that all the reasoning and discussion is documented in the report that happened at the finance working group. As a second recommendation.
Well, let's just take the first one. Let's just get that out. So we've got a proposal then that we accept the items within Appendix B, bar the tractor and sidearm flail and the sit-on motor, and presumably are you also going to include the car parking machinery? Okay, so that's a proposal. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Stamp. can we vote on that, please? Those in favour of that proposal? Those against? And those abstaining? Okay, thank you. So that's gone through. Okay, so we move on to agenda item 12. Any other items of business that the chairman decides are... Oh, Councillor Siddle.
Yes, Chair. So tonight is a very significant evening, as this is Mr. Holmes' last committee meeting before he goes on garden leave and before he retires. I put in my jobs for him to do in my garden. So I would just like everybody to show their appreciation for the service to Mr. Holmes.
Chairman, can we refuse that proposal, please? He can't go on gardening leave.
Okay. Apart from that, I have no other urgent business. You'll be glad to know, but that was very, very important business. So, item 13, closure of the meeting. I close the meeting at 8:41.